Hello, everybody. My name is Aviva. You probably know me as Fierce Audie, and today we are going to talk about Autism Speaks. For those who don't know, I have been an autistic advocate for many years since my now 13-year-old son was diagnosed as autistic, and that's when I figured out that I'm autistic myself. Autism Speaks is the most popular and most well known charity, yet it is the most toxic. They are the creator of what we call the tragedy narrative. This is why people are so afraid of autism and will do anything to try to prevent their children from being autistic, even though there's nothing you can do. All these tries, they're futile. You just accept the child for who they are, and then they grow up to be a lot happier than we were growing up. A lot of the things I'm going to say, I don't agree with what they do, but I am just giving some information so you are better educated. My first experience with Autism Speaks was after my 13-year-old son, who we'll call Bug. I don't give the names of my children over social media for their protection. Also, because when I'm fighting the MMS bleach, they've actually sent people to my house. And luckily, my husband used to be a cop, and his old partner was patrolling near where the person lived who came to our house. So we were just very lucky in that aspect that that was taken care of. But anyway, so most of the autistic community downright hate Autism Speaks, and you would get a lot of parents defending them because Autism Speaks is all the information when our children were diagnosed and when we were diagnosed about autism. There was really nothing else to go on. This was also before the internet. Um, most of I have most of my dealings with them have not been very good. My first autistic child, like I told you, when I was 13, oh no, I'm sorry, when he was 3, he is 13 now. I brought him to the neurologist and I got the diagnosis pretty quickly. He suggested ABA. He didn't push it because after I figured out what ABA was, I didn't know what the therapy was that I had been through when I was a kid. I knew it was harmful, but I didn't know what it was called until I was connected with the autistic community. But when I said my stance on it, he didn't really push it. He just has to. In the state of Florida, if you don't push it, you can lose your neurologist license. This is what he told me. Um, so around this time, I suspected that I was autistic. He gave me the number to Autism Speaks, the local chapter here in Palm Beach County, and he told me to give them a call so I could get more information. Um, it made perfect sense. Everything I filled out on these checklists was just like me. I didn't suspect it because I thought he was just like me. So I didn't really believe it was a coincidence, so I decided to give them a call. They told me that their local chapter was going to be at a local disability fair at a local high school, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity to speak to the people face to face. I was really excited. I wanted to get more information to help Bug, to help me, and to see if any other children were going to be autistic as well. I got information about different services that Bug would be eligible for, which was great. There was nothing for adults. I thought that was weird because, you don't outgrow autism. You don't turn 18 and all of a sudden, oh, I'm not autistic anymore. I'm neurotypical because I'm 18. No, that's not how that works. When I got to the Autism Speaks table, my Bug waves hello. He was non-speaking at the time. I did mention that I was looking into getting evaluated myself because I suspected I am autistic. And she asked me how many children I had. I said 3. It was 3 at the time. It was just Boop, Rue, and Bug. I think I was pregnant with my youngest biological son at that point. Um, what she said to me really shocked me. I was yelled at in the middle of this gymnasium at this high school that you should not have bred. We do not need any more people with autism. What's wrong with you? From that moment, I took my son out of the fair. I was really distraught, really upset. I even tried calling the agency number again. No one wanted to hear from me. They just ignored that this ever happened. This is just like them to sweep things under the rug. From that day forward, I really had a personal grudge against Autism Speaks and everything that they stand for. So, how was Autism Speaks founded? I'm going to go through the history. It was founded by Bob Wright in February 2005. He was the vice chairman of General Electric, and he formed this organization soon after his grandson Christian was diagnosed as autistic. In 2005, Bernie Marcus, the co founder of Home Depot, donated $25 million to launch Autism Speaks. He has been on the board ever since. In January of 2008, a child clinical psychologist by the name of Geraldine Dawson became the Autism Speaks Chief Science Officer. In 2009, Autism Science Foundation was started by Allison Singer just after she resigned as a senior executive to Autism Speaks. She did not want to devote any more money into research that tries to prove there is a vaccine autism link, which has been disproven numerous times. And every time there's been a study, the same results duplicate and replicate. There is no vaccine autism link. There never has been. This is just something to blame. There is no scientific evidence that this is the case. And starting in 2009, they used Wubsy from the television show Wow, Wow, Wubsy to promote it. In April 2010, it named Yoko Ono as its first global autism ambassador. Since forming the organization, they have merged with 3 other autism organizations. They did this in order to raise millions of dollars in autism research. On May 21st, 2015, Bob Wright resigned as chairman. Brian Kelly gladly took over. He previously was the chairman of Auditing and Family Services for Autism Speaks. Bob Wright is on the board as a co-founder. The other co-founder is Bob Wright's wife, Suzanne Wright, took a leave of absence in November 2015 when she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She passed away on July 29th, 2016. In 2016, Autism Speaks raised $47.5 million. This was an 18% drop from the previous year. They attributed the drop in revenue to changes in funding of their Missing Research Program, that's spelled MSSNG, and declines in walk participation. This is a good thing. I will go more into what missing is in a bit. In 2018, Allison Singer started the National Council on Severe Autism. This has been just as harmful to the autistic community, if not more. They refuse to denounce or condemn the use of MMS on autistic children, even after the autistic community has reached out to them and asked them about it. They also make people think that quote-unquote autism parents are the people who are marginalized when no one wants to listen to autistic adults. They think the parents know better. Once they find out we're autistic, they just don't want to listen. In 2003, Laura Slatkin, one of the Autism Speaks founding members, left to start Next for Autism. It is originally known as New York Collaborates for Autism. This is an ABA-based organization. They have a charter school in New York City, which is ABA-based. I did have my children in ABA-based charter school before, and it's awful. I just didn't have any other place to send them, but I did have it in their IEPs that they are not allowed to ABA my children. You can do that. Remember, you are half of that IEP committee. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. So what is Autism Speaks and what do they do? Autism Speaks is an organization that has been a source of funding to find the cause and treatments for autism. They had curing autism as part of their mission statement until 2016. They had made a press release stating that they were moving away from that. I didn't believe this, and neither did most of the autistic community. We all know they were full of crap. So they're still continuing research. The research is is horrific. Autism Speaks has raised public awareness for research, raised funds for research, and lobbied Congress. The main areas of research for Autism Speaks are etiology, including genetic and environmental factors that may cause autism. This research includes searches for autism susceptibility genes, animal models for autism, environmental toxins, and maternal viral infections. So I'm going to stop there. I am a veterinary technologist, so that means I am a veterinary nurse. I have a bachelor's in veterinary technology. Half of my bachelor's degree program was in research. There is no such thing as autism in non-human animals. I go into in a blog post talking about how the brain and the mentality of animals are so fundamentally different they cannot be autistic. It doesn't make any sense. Yet they test on these animals just because. I could go on an hour just in that. It's horrific. Yes, animal based research is necessary to save lives, but in this case, it is just torturing the animals and it's just inhumane. Then they also do biology studies on the cells, the brain, and the body. It focuses on the brain development and includes autism tissue program as discussed below. Diagnosis includes epidemiology, early diagnosis, and biomarkers. Autism therapies include medication, behavioral, ABA as an example, and psychological interventions. This includes treatment for co-occurring medical conditions in children which are unrelated to autism, such as sleep disorders, gastrointestinal disorders that may hinder behavioral interventions, along with the treatment for older individuals and complementary and alternative medicine, quack treatment, like stem cell therapy, which they have promoted, which we'll get into in a little while. And they also call it integrative medicine. It is all the same thing. It's all quackery. Autism Speaks funds the Autism Genetic Resource Exchange. This is a DNA registry of the genotype of the phenotype information that is available to autism researchers worldwide. AGRE was established in the 1990s by an organization called Cure Autism Now. This is one of the organizations that Autism Speaks absorbed. Autism Speaks also funds the Autism Tissue Program. It's a network of researchers who manage and distribute brain tissues. It is said that these tissues are rare and vital to autism research for the cause. So they take autistic brains after someone has passed away and just circulate their tissue to try to make us not exist. Autism Speaks also supports the Clinical Trials Network. Its primary focus is new pharmacological treatments. They also support the Toddler Treatment Network. They develop new interventions for toddlers. How about letting toddlers be toddlers? Like, for example, last night, my 18-month-old, who we'll call Potato, right? She was playing with our all-in-one printer, which is sitting on the floor because we're in the process of moving and packing things up. She was playing with the printer, and she and my husband got into an argument. He told her to stop, and she screamed at him, and it was really funny. How about letting toddlers be toddlers? Leave the children alone. Since 2014, Google has partnered with Autism Speaks at a project called Missing, like we mentioned before. It is pronounced Missing. It was previously called Autism Speaks 10K Genome Program. This is an open source research platform to collect and study the DNA of 10,000 families that have autistic family members. Their goal is to create a database of sequenced genomic information on autism, which would run on Google's genome cloud-based database, Google Genomics. In December 2014, they announced they would permit worldwide access to the research for further genome analysis. So all these people have their genes in this database without their consent, because I bet there were desperate parents who want to find a cure and didn't ask their autistic family members whether or not they wanted their genetic material, their genetic information available for strangers to use. Spark for Autism is another study looking to compile the largest database of autistic DNA. They say it's not for a cure, but why else would they want our DNA if they didn't want to cure us, didn't want to find the genes that link to it? And after much study, there has been found there is no singular autism gene. So they wasted all that could have been used to help autistic people and their families live a better life. Autism Speaks has funded many unethical research studies that include scarring autistic toddlers and testing transdermal nicotine to try to cure us, but they say they don't seek a cure anymore. So, one of these studies, right, is okay, one of these studies is testing cigarette cessation patches on autistic minors. Yes, so they did this through Yale University. So let me tell you about that. In 2018, Yale School of Medicine conducted two studies that centers around using nicotine patches for autistic people displaying aggression. Instead of trying to figure out why people are struggling like this, they just want to change the behavior. It doesn't matter how they're feeling or what's causing it. The very patches that help grown adults quit smoking to overcome a nicotine addiction to reduce the risk of lung cancer and heart disease. There are parents who heard rumors that nicotine could be used to treat their children's aggression, even though there is insufficient evidence to support this claim. This is a direct quote from the Yale School of Medicine. The Yale School of Medicine is rewriting nicotine's unfavorable reputation. This rumor could cause these parents to run to the store and buy their kids nicotine patches to use and experiment on their children. This is not unheard of. Most quacks will admit to experimenting on their children. Carrie Rivera, who spread chlorine dioxide for autistic kids, will be the first to admit this. Although transdermal nicotine is FDA approved to treat smoking cessation in adults, we ethically can't conduct a clinical trial on a number of patients without getting approval from Yale's Institutional Review Board. Autism Speaks not only awarded Yale Medical School a grant, they partnered with them for these studies. What is nicotine? Nicotine is the addictive drug in tobacco products. Cigarettes, cigars, smokeless tobacco, and most e-cigarettes contain nicotine. People who use tobacco become addicted soon after they start. They have a very hard time stopping. It is just as addictive as heroin and cocaine. Some people are unable to stop. Nicotine in youth and young adults. Nicotine has a negative effect on the developing brain and changes its chemistry. The human brain development continues until the age of 25. Nicotine used during childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood is associated with memory, attention difficulty, and learning difficulty. Nicotine causes changes in the brain that make it more vulnerable to chronic use of addictive drugs. In high doses, nicotine is considered a poison. Children have been harmed and died from drinking e-cigarette fluid. Nicotine replacement therapies. It seems to be counterproductive, but nicotine replacement therapies such as nicotine patches help smokers quit. They provide a lower level of nicotine that can help reduce withdrawal symptoms while the person transitions to a tobacco-free life. It is not recommended for people who have never smoked or used any type of tobacco product. How the study was funded. Autism Speaks claim they change and do not want to find a cure and advocate for autistic people. Yale University received a grant for $185,000 from Autism Speaks to conduct these studies. Autism Speaks did not consider the risks of giving people who have never smoked nicotine patches. This is what Autism Speaks has to say. Aggression is highly comorbid with autism spectrum disorder and is a strong predictor of negative outcomes for patients and families. Current pharmacological options for aggression are of limited efficacy and for many can result in further morbidity. Better understanding of the neurobiology underlying aggression, ASD, and novel pharmacological treatments, strategies rationally derived from these mechanisms are required to solve this critical problem. Genetic neuropathological and animal model studies have found abnormalities in nicotinic acetylcholine receptor NACHR system brains of people with ASD and NACHRS influence of the properties of essentially all major neurotransmitter systems. The NACHR agnostic nicotine reduces aggression in multiple animal models, and our preliminary data suggests it affects via activation of the A7 receptor. CHRNA7, the gene for A7, is deleted in 15q13.3 microdeletion syndrome, which phenotypically can cause ASD and aggression. There is no autism gene. This project thus hypothesizes that modulation of the NACHR signaling might be a novel treatment strategy for aggression in ASD. The hypothesis will be tested by 1. Identifying neurocircuitry and pharmacology under nicotine's anti-aggressive effects in mouse models of aggression in ASD. 2. Determining the efficacy of transdermal nicotine for aggression in ASD in a pilot clinical trial. This is a personal note. Treating autistic people with dignity and not trying to change them will cause less aggression. Remember, behavior is communication. So the study. There were 2 studies that were funded using this method. The first one was called The Reduction of Aggressive Episodes After Repeated Transdermal Nicotine Administration in Hospitalized Adolescent with Autism Spectrum Disorder. So they were testing this on children. Adolescent is a child under 25. In this study, only 1 participant was used in this study. Not much of a sample size. They conducted this study based on the given mechanism of action, independent of the current dopamine receptor drugs currently described for aggression. Based on this, they tested to see if nicotine delivered through a patch on the skin may safely reduce irritability and aggression in autistic people with incomplete symptom response when other treatments are ineffective. They conduct this study despite the warnings on the effects of what nicotine can do to a developing brain. We'll call the child who was experimented on JC. He was admitted to the hospital for, quote, severe and worsening behavioral problems, including self-directed aggression, unquote. This child is a non-speaking autistic adolescent. The parents and staff tried medication that didn't work and behavior intervention. I'm like, who wants to be an ABA? That's just going to make everything worse. The informed consent was given by the parent for this trial. A copy of the informed consent packet was not available. A 21 milligram nicotine patch was placed on the child's skin as an unneeded basis at the hospital's discretion for agitation, irritability, and aggression. Instead of tending to his needs, they applied the nicotine patch to solve their problems. There's no one smoking in the household. This child has never been exposed to nicotine before, even though the FDA does warn against using nicotine on someone who's never been around it. The child weighed 320 pounds, and the dose was reported as effective. They would use a lower dose if they did not. They would have used a smaller dose if they had not observed the child. The first application was done during an incident of aggression. The child did not escalate further after the application. The next day, the child became agitated, a patch was not applied, and physical restraint was required. We're going to go over physical restraint in another podcast because that will take a whole hour to cover just that by itself. After this protocol, the child was required no emergency medication administration. Yes, it worked, but should have it been done? What will be the lasting effects of nicotine on this child? So this study was applied to ethical principles when involving developmentally disabled research. And after going through all the principles of ethical research, it's deemed an unethical study. poor child. That poor child. So the other study that Yale did was they let me find it real quick. So what they did, I can't find it right now, but what they did was they took autistic toddlers and they use stimulant stimulus that would scare them, and they wanted to see how these autistic toddlers would react to scary stimuli if it was going to be different than neurotypical toddlers. They don't realize, or maybe they did and they just didn't care. They don't realize that this could cause a lot of this could cause PTSD. This could cause psychological trauma in such a young age, and I just can't even begin. I can't even begin to imagine subjecting my child to this when they're this young. I just can't. I don't understand why scaring babies, they're under 18 months old, would help anything. They just they just wouldn't. It just would not help anything. All right, so moving on to awareness. I'm sure many of you know of the I am autism ad that was up, and the person who wrote this ad, his name is Billy Mann. He's a big name in music entertainment, and he did put out a what I call a fake apology for this. There was so much outrage. There was just so much outrage with this. So Billy Mann is currently a board member of Autism Speaks. He wrote that horror commercial I was just talking about, We All Love to Hate. He did write a fake apology. It had gaslighting, a pity party rant. It talked all about him. And then after people said this is not a real apology, he did delete it. A good friend of mine, Eve Ryland, was able to get screenshots right before it got deleted. So it lives on forever. So I am going to read this apology and you will see how bad it is. To the autism community. Autism community refers to parents, not to autistic adults. I owe the autism self-advocacy community an apology. I do, and it's real and heartfelt, and I am compelled to begin this editorial with that simply, quite simply. First, my apology, while heartfelt and truthful, is also complex and layered as it's born from a unique perspective that autism self-advocates will not fully understand, even though most parents of an autistic child with autism may not necessarily understand or agree with. Around 2009, while president of the EMI Music, I was asked to speak at 10 Downing Street in London before then Prime Minister Gordon Brown's wife and distinguished members of the Prime Minister's cabinet, as well as several United Kingdom's foremost thought leaders in the autism community. Notables attending event varied from renowned Oxford autism researcher Simon Baron Cohen. We'll cover him in another episode later on. There's a lot on him. To a friend and soon to be best director of Oscar-winning Alfonso Cuarón. Also, there were countless political figures as well as several of my music industry colleagues who, up until the event, knew very little of my personal connection with autism. As National Board member of Autism Speaks, then a relatively young but fast-growing not-for-profit charity which has truly moved the needle for the majority of the autism community. It was one of the organization's co-founders, Bob and Suzanne Wright, who asked me to speak. Scheduled aligned so that not only would I be in London at the time of this event, but my wife Gina would also be there. Right Right now, he is just listing his credentials. It has nothing to do with this monstrosity that he wrote. He is saying he was the president of this music company. I have a bachelor's in applied science and veterinary technology. What's the point? He also mentioned all these famous people. I met Dr. Oz, and he helped me. He helped me warn people MMS. So what? It doesn't matter. I'm waiting for an apology. As he continues. On a high-speed train from Paris to London, I was going over my remarks. It was boring, filled with all the issues, rising statistics, and daunting costs autism families face. It was very, not to offend my British friend, English. It read more like a librarian's welcome from an episode of Downton Abbey than words to move leaders to action. Moreover, illustrate the depth and complexity of being a father of a severely autistic child. The stark truth for my wife and me was that our oldest son Jasper's autism was overwhelming us and becoming incredibly more challenging for Jasper himself. Today, there are some new television programs that have begun to articulate the various hues and degree of autism. He's talking about Atypical, The Good Doctor, and things like that. Um, but our little guy's autism was not overflowing with card counting, savant characteristics that we could reach, or gentle rocking back and forth, autonomous behavior from which the term autism was born somewhere in Austria. I'm going to stop you there. It was not born in Austria. It was discovered by somebody. They called people who were schizophrenic autistic um, when they were displaying certain characteristics. There was a Jewish Ukrainian doctor um, who differentiated autistic people from schizophrenic people. So he is way off base here. So my son's autism was and is sometimes very dark, and it involves screaming, energy bursts, self-injurious behaviors like hitting oneself, sleeplessness, repetitive patterns of all kinds, echolalia, repeating sounds and words over and over, apraxia, and the list goes on. Our son was born into a world on a warm summer day, and he crawled and babbled and giggled and walked and developed typically until he didn't. From the moment he was born, we loved and love him completely and wholly, but these challenges are not easy for him and many who love him. I'm still waiting for an apology. He's just going on an ableist rant about his son, about how, oh no, poor him, he has to raise an autistic child. Poor baby. You know, I've got 5 autistic children, and not once have I felt sorry for them, felt sorry for me. Yeah, I get overwhelmed because I have 8 children. Parenthood is hard. It is not harder to parent an autistic child. The quote unquote apology continues. 2, an autism self advocate, that is, one who has an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis and also has the depth, the talent, articulation, analytical, and emotional gifts to deploy in order to stand up for the rights of individuals with autism. Some of what I will write here may not be easily digest, but I'm going to try to express myself as honestly as I can. As this takes shape, hopefully the reveal may provide all of us with some latitude and room for shared perspective. Still waiting for an apology. I remember one of our first scary incidents was when we lived in an apartment building in Manhattan. Jasper was only a crawling baby, and we discovered that, like many kids on the autism spectrum, he was a flight risk. One day, he simply vanished from our apartment. Our babysitter had apparently turned around for a moment and he was gone. Thankfully, one of the men who worked in our building found Jasper in the emergency stairwell, half a dozen flights down from the back exit in our kitchen. Autism and some of the unique safety risks were starting to reveal themselves to us. My wife and I went from being untouchably happy newlywed couple to having our first baby in our first home to confronting a vague, confused ASD diagnosis that no one seemed to be able to define for us. Thank God for Autism Speaks, which today proves a host of free tools for families, including the first 100-day kit. I will be I'll be going over that in a minute. Plus, there are support lines for people who really need it, walks, events, and that shine a light on research, employment, community, and more. But at that time, we were hydroplaning emotionally, and when the developmental psychologist told us that Jasper might be severely impacted by autism, may never live independently, I watched Gina stumble down the hallway to our bedroom, curl up in a ball, and sob. We were both helpless, and my angel of a son sat beautifully unaware, rosy cheeks and pink lips, big brown eyes staring into space. His only word was "guh." Okay, so your child disappearing from you is scary. So instead of trying to make other people feel sorry for you, what you do is childproof your home. Make sure your home is safe for the child so they cannot do that. But back to the speech in London. So, on the train from Paris to London, I read my boring Downton Abbey speech to myself and looked at Gina and said, I can't read this. It says nothing. I'm just spewing facts and stats and these people already know. It won't move anyone to see the urgency. It does not capture any of what we experienced when Jasper was diagnosed or the actual grief you can feel for the loss of what you thought your child's health was going to be. You cannot grieve the child that you still alive. Your child's still the same. We were on our own and suffering. Unlike most families, we were advantaged and living in the most sophisticated city in America. If you ask any parent who has been in our shoes, including parents of self-advocates, I believe they will tell you an autism diagnosis can tear families apart. The divorce rate is slightly higher. The bankruptcy rate is significantly higher. The states are cutting aid to the number of children being diagnosed and it is exploded, with only a fraction of reflected by greater identification of disorder. More than that, autism doesn't stop at 18. In fact, the majority of services are scaffolding to our public schools do try and provide stop to at what is referred as the cliff after high school. The unemployment for individuals with autism is over 70%, and the number one most haunting thought to every parent of a child with severe autism thinks that every day will who will care for and protect my child when we are gone. Pure and simple. So how do I convey this in the speech? How do I express the emotion and urgency of my experience as a father? And on top of this, I am a songwriter, not an amateur songwriter either. I write songs for the biggest artists in the world. What kind of musicless song will this be? So I wrote I Am Autism. I Am Autism is a dark but was intended to leave the listener hopeful without realizing or certainly intending I Am Autism would be a jagged knife in the heart of many in the autism community. I created this poem purely from my personal perspective as a father with a son with severe autism. To us, autism was a thief in the night that stole our once babbling happy son from us. To us, autism dismantled, tested, crumbled friendships and family relationships. Autism applied economic pressure on us even as my career was blossoming. Autism at the time did not feel like a gift to us, but it was a catastrophe of screaming, persevering, alienation imposed on us. Autism sucked. We wanted a cure. We prayed for a cure. We did not sleep because our son did not sleep, and every waking hour was spent worrying about his safety and our lives end. So on that high-speed train, I wrote I Am Autism. I'm still waiting for an apology. No apology yet. It continues. At 10 Downing Street, I Am Autism had the high impact I had hoped for, or so I thought. I held the microphone and read the poem, and everyone cried. Everyone. British people are not typically the ones to cry publicly, in my experience. And my emotions were stirred as I read because it was so dark and at the time very much my truth. But it should be noted that second half of the poem was quite optimistic, and the specialists and advocates and therapists and families would push back on the dark force of autism and meet the challenges for our kids. I feel the kind of energy to release that one gets from a confessional. I'm Jewish, not that I would know. He's still perpetuating the tragedy narrative. Will continue. Later that night, there was a private dinner hosted by Bob and Suzanne Wright. Suzanne, whose grandson is severely autistic, was such a fierce advocate for the autism community. The world needs to hear this, Billy, she passionately told me. In retrospect, I remember Simon Baron Cohen gently suggesting we pause and reflect on it. Might the high functioning autistics take offense to such a notion? He asked softly. But the momentum was Suzanne's. If you know Suzanne Wright, when she puts her engine into gear, you best get out of the way. By the dinner's end, she recruited Alfonso and me to collaborate. Autism Speaks would help produce a little video, and we would use footage of families wearing white t-shirts and jeans. It was done. We would share I Am Autism and move people to action. An Oscar Grammy nominated duo would create it. With Suzanne's intensity and focus behind it, it somehow happened. But the response was not what Suzanne or any of us had envisioned. Some parents were there some parents praised from and some there was outrage. I Am Autism went from galvanizing the autism community to act and conquer this disorder to a dagger in the heart of a healthy segment of the community. And being perfectly honest, at the time I didn't get it. I just didn't. For us, autism was so jarring when overwhelmed. Our sleepless friends with autistic children who wipe faces in their bedroom walls night after night said thank you to me. Random parents and educators thanking me with tears for getting it and saying the truth. Their pain was under a fierce attack. Alfonso and I were under attack too. Even a couple of Autism Speaks board members protested how awful it was. Right now, he's playing the victim. This is not an apology. We're still waiting. We're probably not going to get it, but it continues. The most violent pushback came from the self-advocates, most notably Ari Neiman, whom President Obama had appointed to help represent the autism community in the White House. Back then, being entirely honest, I was livid. If an individual has the ability to live independently, show up to work, emote, express, analyze, and validize, give public speeches, attend college, and then engage in public policy, what could he know about my son's autism? That's not autism. I thought that's autism light. Autism light. Okay. We're diet soda now. Okay. My son could barely speak. My son took 7 years to learn how to swim back and forth in a pool. My son is 16 and needs a storyboard to follow every time he has to wash himself. How on earth can he fully functioning autistic person speak for us? Moreover, how can they claim to speak for him? Meanwhile, the self-advocates fought back, asking for the same. How can Autism speak for us? We are a distinct minority among 7 million individuals on the spectrum, but we are contaminated human being possessed by evil, they asked. Adults who have social quirks and challenges, who make noises and have a complex associated disorders that we have to self-regulate and manage day after day while trying to feel normal and accepted. How can you speak for us? I didn't get it until our younger son Felix was diagnosed with autism too. Except Felix can talk, laugh, play, and learn guitar, and taught himself Spanish literally, and at a specious glance appears neurotypical. As a faith-based person, I realized that God clearly had more for me to learn. Autism is a snowflake disorder, and no kids are exactly the same. Even if they share similar characteristics, should Autism Speaks, a truly inclusive umbrella organization, choose, for lack of a better description and aside, one of a kind, autism really better or worse than the other? And is really worse in today's environment where cyberbullying has been weaponized by 12-year-olds and potential leaders? Should community's largest charity ignore the segment of this growth in population more than another? Felix's future adult independence has yet to be clear, but we are optimistic, even as we know Jasper will never be independent. Is survival of the autismist? Okay. All right, he continues. I realized after years of caring, not caring, rationalizing, and spinning, I am autism was not my best, most balanced moment. I was honest, but it should have been highlighted that as more than just a dad in pain expressing his unique autism experience. You do not experience autism if you are not autistic. Today I know I was wrong, and I do hurt knowing that I should my other son Felix read that poem. Given his struggle with communication subtleties, he think that I might love him less. Typing these words alone fill me with shame. In an instant, I am enlightened, humbled, and grateful to the self advocacy community for never letting up. While I grieve the loss of my traditional expectations of fatherhood, they stood up without me value and dignity of my two sons, and I had to catch up. And I have. Perhaps only Perhaps only the father of two children, each uniquely autistic, could be swayed to understand how far a diagnostic pendulum can swing. And like most challenges each of us face, this paradox was tailor made for me. No. Okay. I am proud that Autism Speaks had been largely transformed. Like any big organization or startup, it was a constant work in progress and ideally fails quickly with a misstep and wins slowly by strongly when things go well. The charity lost in indefeatable co-founder Suzanne Wright suddenly to pancreatic cancer is wisely taking the period of grief as an opportunity of self reflection. The media's savvy power broker leadership has changed from Suzanne and her husband of 50 years, Bob Wright, the legendary GE NBC Universal mogul and chairman, as a more spoken leader, real estate mogul, and autism dad. Brian Kelly, whose mantra and focus is purely about serving every facet of the autism community, from those who see autism as a blessing to those who see it as a tragedy. Autism Speaks illuminated this neurological disorder more brightly than anyone could have imagined, and the organization deserves positive credit. The blue puzzle piece, which I wear often and proudly, so much I have puzzle piece tattoo on my left wrist, solidified the color and symbol for families. Autism Awareness, oh, Autism Awareness Month. World Autism Awareness Day, April 2nd, sanctioned by the United Nations. I remember Suzanne Rape coming up with the idea to light it up blue, and in only a couple of years today, thousands of the world's most iconic landmarks and buildings are lit up blue, and the globe promote acceptance, understanding, and awareness. Autism Speaks has raised, lobbied for, and deployed over $1 billion in funding, research, education, done so working in a bipartisan fashion at home and inclusive fashion overseas. But autism remains a complex, and it is too often thought as a children's disorder when in fact our children with autism become teenagers with autism, adults with autism, and elderly people with autism. Do we need a cure? Well, that debate's not for this piece. If you ask the families who are severely impacted, who's the face of the financial associated health challenges, seizures, GI challenges, immune deficiencies, etc., and the practical hardships, I think yes, they would want a cure. 15% of autistic people have epilepsy compared to the 1% of typical people. 49% of autistic people are at risk for wandering, which can turn tragic. If if you ask the self-advocacy community, they don't want to be cured and find the notion offensive. They want to be included, accepted, and embraced as a critical voice in every dialogue that is associated with the disorder and fully be embraced everywhere. To my two neurotypical daughters who were given, in addition to clunky road every child faces growing up, they are given no choice but to take oftentimes isolating journey with autism each day. Already, our 11-year-old daughter gently asks, will my kid have autism too? She is not asking to be cowardly, she's asking to be brave. How would most autism parents wish to answer this question, and would longing for the next generation to opt out of autism be wrong? I don't know how to answer this question. I only know I cannot disqualify it. Okay, we're at the last paragraph. I love my children, all of them equally. They are incredible. And my wife and I have been blessed with extraordinary life and marriage and more resources than most absorb. Many of the daunting costs, emotional and financial. Associated with our boys' unique challenges, Autism Speaks enters its second decade of existence. Perhaps the snowflake paradox of being parent of two fierce young daughters who already advocate for their brothers, my two magnificent and vastly different autistic sons, has led me to understand that there is not one autism at all. There are many autisms deserving of our resources, compassion, and individuals on the spectrum who deserve respect and parity. Perhaps Autism Speaks will be even better as Autism Speaks. I only know that today I sit on a more diverse Autism Speaks board that includes parents and individuals of all backgrounds, including those on the spectrum. And the charity standing and rating is higher outreach than ever. But just as we are all works in progress, so should every nonprofit organization. We can always do better and grow. That was not an apology, and the people on the board, they only want autistic people on the board who are just as brainwashed as they are. All right. So after this monstrosity, let's go through their history of awareness. The Walk for Autism Research program holds walks annually. This is held in Long Island, New York. In 2006 they raised $2 million. They have over $20,000 participants and a raise and more. And the Ad Council launched a campaign highlighting the importance of early detection. In February 2005, the Today Show aired a week-long series highlighting autism research and treatment. In 2006, Autism Speaks put out a documentary called Autism Every Day. A longer version was accepted into the Sundance Film Festival. It really shows the martyr narrative and is extremely harmful to the autistic community. The way they portray autistic people is beyond any sort of decency. If you were to look it up, it's on YouTube. Watch at your own risk. In December 2007, Suzanne Wright met with Sheikh Moza of Qatar to pressure the county to sponsor a United Nations resolution recognizing World Autism Day. They introduced the resolution and it was passed and adopted without a vote by the United Nations General Assembly, primarily as a supplement to the previous United Nations initiatives to improve human rights. The Wrights helped launch Autism Speaks Light It Up Blue campaign and an annual focus on autism event. So, why do they light it up blue? They light it up blue because they say that autism is a quote unquote boys disorder, that it only affects boys. This is because their diagnostic criteria wasn't what it should be. There were a lot of little girls being left out. Even though autism should not be gendered, there are a lot of children who are not diagnosed when they're young because or like me, I was diagnosed with ADHD with neurological deficiencies when I was 6. This was in 1988. They didn't want to diagnose me because I wasn't a boy. So that's what they diagnosed me with. So they light it up blue because it's a boy's disorder, or that's what they call it. All right. In 2015, the Muppet on the Sesame Street who was autistic was introduced. Her name was Julia. Autism Speaks as an Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and the Ad Council worked together to create this character. The autistic children were beginning to be seen. As usual, Autism Speaks messed up too. So, in this case, Julia was a girl. Which was really great because they always showed boy savants on TV up until this point. So this is a really good thing. On August 5th, 2019, ASAN announced that they were ending their partnership with Autism Speaks and Sesame Street. This was because of Autism Speaks 100-Day Kit. In this kit, Autism Speaks encourages parents to grieve the autistic child as if they had died. Imagine your parents grieving you when you're standing right there. This furthers the stigma against autistic adults and children. While early detection is not a bad thing, it is what's done with it. Autism Speaks continues the tragedy narrative to further imply that autistics are burdens on their families and are broken. They also push a lot of pseudoscientific treatments and harmful treatments like chelation, ABA, supplements, and the like. ASN tried to explain their position, and Autism Speaks, as well as the Ad Council, were unwilling to budge. Julia could have been a great thing for the autistic community. So, and Autism Speaks also influenced legislation. On December 19th, 2006, the 109th Congress passed the Combating Autism Act. This authorized funding to the autism research and ABA. Autism Speaks lobbied for this law to pass. No autistic person was talked to in this writing of this bill and passing into law. For the millions of Americans whose lives are affected by autism, today is a day of hope. Combating Autism Act of 2006 will increase public awareness about this disorder and provide enhanced federal support for autism research and treatment. By creating a national education program for doctors and the public about autism, this legislation will help more people recognize the symptoms of autism. This will lead to early identification and intervention, which is critical for children with autism. I'm proud to sign this bill into law and confident that it will serve as an important foundation for our nation's effort to find a cure for autism. This was said by President Bush because who did he have for information? Autism Speaks. I don't fully blame him because of the information he was getting and using that information to say this quote to the American public. On December 27th, 2012, the Combating Autism Reauthorization Act was passed. This act reauthorized all the funding from the Combating Autism Act of 2006. On September 30th, 2019, September 30th is also the anniversary of neurodiversity. The Autism Cares Act was passed. The name was changed due to its efforts by the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. It was a small change, but it made a big impact. On May 17th, 2021, Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina signed the Autism Accessibility Bill into law. This removes a requirement that BCBAs working in North Carolina be supervised by licensed psychologists. They removed this to make the state more attractive to behavior analysts. Not only are they abusing children, but they won't have the supervision of psychologists to make sure things don't go too far and out of hand. ABA itself is bad, but this is open season on autistic children in North Carolina. The state behavior analyst board will only consist of 5 people for the entire state. I would hate to be an autistic child in North Carolina right now, and it's still to this day. Kyle Robinson, who attended the signing, said, "We know firsthand the struggles families seeking ABA services in North Carolina. Our family traveled across the state for over 2 years in order to find the services Samuel needed. This will allow more kids like Samuel to receive help they need to reach the full potential. Thank you, Autism Speaks, for your tireless efforts over the past several years in making this possible for families in North Carolina." So, in Virginia, in February 2022, Megan Ashburn, who's also known as Non-Autism Mom, was on a Zoom conference, a Zoom meeting with Autism Speaks and other ABA lobbyists. This is a post about this this meeting. This is important for parents of non speaking children to read and process. This week, I advocated in front of the Virginia House of Delegates for my non speaking child, his peers, and their teachers. I didn't realize that I would be going up against Autism Speaks and Council of, of Autism Service Providers. HB 1047 was a modest but meaningful bill that would protect non speaking students in Virginia by ensuring that students' need for augmentative alternative communication wouldn't be used as a reason to segregate a student. A school staff would receive training to support their students before school starts. IQ test results wouldn't be used to deny access to AAC. These are basic protections already put in place by IDEA, but they don't happen. This is why the bill was brought forth, because non speaking students are segregated at an alarming rate, and many aren't even offered AAC. When I went to speak in favor of this modest bill, I was joined by several others, including Virginia Education Association, because our teachers want training to support their non speaking students. After we spoke, Autism Speaks and CASP, a lobbyist for ABA companies, gave nearly identical testimonies about their concerns for the bill's language. I will put in links in the comments. Anyway, the bill is dead now and won't be voted on this year. So before you light it up blue this April, just remember that Autism Speaks advocated against protections for my son, his non-speaking peers, and their teachers in Virginia this week. And be sure to keep this disgustingly wealthy company in mind as you navigate the IEP process and as you fight for services and inclusion. Okay, and now we're going to go to the Light It Up Blue, which I touched upon a little bit. It's observed every April, especially on April 2nd. It is dedicated to raising awareness of autism. It is associated with Autism Speaks, and it is intended to raise international awareness of autism in support of World Autism Awareness Day and Autism Awareness Month in the United States. Blue stands for mostly affecting boys, which is false. Girls normally fall through the cracks because sometimes it can present differently in children. Landmarks all over the world participate. On April 2nd, 2010, the third annual Autism Awareness Day was celebrated at the New York Stock Exchange, where Autism Speaks volunteers and supporters opened the day by ringing the New York Stock Exchange opening bell. In 2011, the White House declined to light it up blue. In 2017, Donald Trump did fulfill the promise to meet to Suzanne Wright and participated that year. It is very well known that they are good friends. So, their history with vaccines. Autism Speaks previously had a high priority research into now discredited claim that vaccines cause autism. Allison Singer, the senior executive of Autism Speaks, resigned in January 2009 in order to not vote to commit money to any new studies on autism and vaccines. She previously voted against this. There are numerous scientific studies that disprove it, and they need to move on and stop wasting people's time and money. They could be using these resources to help actual people. In March of 2010, they said they would not completely abandon the idea that vaccines could cause autism, and it would support research to determine whether subsets of individuals might have an increased risk. In August 2014, Autism Speaks said, "We strongly encourage parents to have children vaccinated for protection against serious disease. We recognize that some parents still have concerns about vaccines, particularly if they have a child or relative with autism. We urge them to find a health practitioner that will help them ensure the well-being of their child." That really seems like they're encouraging parents to find a doctor or another healthcare provider that is willing to have them exempt from vaccines. That's scary. In 2017, Autism Speaks said that each family has a unique experience with autism diagnosis, and for some it corresponds with the timing of their childhood vaccines. At the same time, scientists have have conducted extensive research over the last 2 decades to determine whether there is any link between childhood vaccines and autism. The results of this research is clear. Vaccines do not cause autism. I'm going to say it again. Vaccines do not cause autism. Anyway, their financial spending, which is what everybody wants to know, they bring in millions of dollars every single year and want to know where this money goes. In 2009, Disability Scoop questioned Autism Speaks about its chief science officer, Jerry Dawson, who received $669,751 in compensation in 2008, including $269,721 to relocate her family from Washington, North Carolina. Autism Speaks responded that Dawson's compensation was mid-range for executives with similar positions in the nonprofit sector, and that Dawson's move benefited Autism Speaks because she will be more accessible to its office, science divisions, government health agencies in Washington, D.C. In her new position at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, compared to other autism-focused nonprofit organizations, Autism Speaks spends a smaller percentage of its revenue on furthering its mission. According to a $175,000 severance payment to John Gruber and a $123,171 severance payment to Elizabeth Feld. Next, okay. So, next, they had a partnership with Kellogg's. On August 13th, 2019, there was a press release from Kellogg's that they teamed up with Autism Speaks to create sensory love notes so children with autism can express and receive love in their own unique way during the school day. This is to expand their inclusion initiative. You don't need sensory notes to know that our parents love them. I never did this with my children. They know we love them. And that's it. This is nothing more than this is ableist and inspiration porn. A quote from them. Rice Krispie Treats believes every child needs love and support as they head back to school, developing writable wrappers in 2017 for parents and caregivers to send their children encouraging messages on their lunchbox. Last year, Rice Krispies Treats took a stand for inclusivity by partnering with the National Federation of the Blind to create accessible love notes in the form of braille stickers and re-recordable audio boxes. See, that's different. That's inclusive. It goes on. This is a beautiful way to extend our Rice Krispie Treats love notes and showcase many ways to express love and support as kids return to school, said Chris Boehner, Senior Vice President of Global Corporate Affairs at Kellogg's. This cause is very near and dear to me as a mom of a child with autism. I know firsthand that the love and emotions aren't always easy for children on the spectrum to express and receive, but they need to feel it as much as any other child. So how do they know what we need to feel? We feel what we need to feel, and we express how we need to express. Stop trying to make us just like you. They use a lot of first-person language and did not consult any autistic people. So something else happened. So my nonprofit, which did merge with AIM, which formed AIM USA, held an online protest against Autism Speaks for their kindness campaign, right? So we infiltrated the protest. And this was in 2020. There couldn't be an actual walk, so they did this instead. So we found this as a perfect opportunity to protest. In 2020, there was a virtual protest on the Autism Speaks Facebook live stream. The protest was a great success, but the response from the husband of an Autism Speak executive was not. This took place before Fierce Autistics and Allies have merged, as I said before. My official statement, it was originally posted on April 27th, 2020. It moved to the AIM site on September 8th, 2020. On April 25th, 2020, Fierce Autistics and Allies protested a kickoff event for Autism Speaks. It was called Steps for Kindness. This was a virtual walk to fundraise for the corporation. The turnout was anything we could ask for, and we want to thank you all personally for it. The protest was a major success, but there was a turn of events that left a sour note. An active board member of our organization received a private message from the husband of an Autism Speaks executive, Lisa Goring. Paul Goring sent my board member a very unprofessional and very inappropriate message on Facebook for speaking out accordance with our mission statement. Paul Goring says, quote, "You have nothing better to do than bash people who give a shit, cunt." Those are his exact words. I was shocked that such a thing would be sent to anyone, let alone an autistic person speaking for their rights. But this is very typical. When autistic people speak out, we always get stomped on. Excuse me. Shortly after this, I sent an email to his wife stating what had happened. Shortly after, I received an email from his wife. So the email that I sent was, "To whom it may concern. My name is Amanda Siegler." This is before my name change. "I am the executive director of an autistic-led organization called Fierce Autistics and Allies. I was hosting a protest during your live stream today on Facebook. Many autistic people commented, many you deleted. I cannot speak for autistic people if you silence us. However, this is not why I'm writing you. During the live stream, a member of my board of directors was on the protest. One of your executives named Lisa Goring. Her husband sent this message to my secretary, a very unprofessional and grotesque message. I am sure you do not want this getting out. I expect a response on this matter. If you Google my name, you will see I am no stranger from the media. I look forward to hearing from you soon." After receiving these messages, they do not... Okay. And I was sent a very blanket response, a form response. "I'm very sorry this happened for your experience," and blah, 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 blah. Like, they didn't mean it. Okay. So after receiving emails, they do not see the gentleman. There is a space between you and harm. This tells me that there was an adjective between those words. This email was not about his apology nor about what he did. This apology was not sent until prompted. The organization wants the situation over with. The professional collaboration between federal non-profit organization guarantees the safety of all members involved. Given the breakdown between Autism Speaks and FAA, the resulting sexual harassment will be handled by the organization representing the victim. There is no war or teams, an initiative toward humane and ethical treatment of autistic people, and the research pertaining to the disability of autism. This is the only way the autism community and the autistic community can work together. The impact of this maleficence can only be evaluated by multiplying its potential cause to the same harm to 3.5 million autistic Americans who do not have direct access to an autistic director of a nationwide nonprofit issuing a public statement on their behalf. So this is the organization that is speaking for us. So I have a list of celebrities that currently support Autism Speaks. And then I have 2 companies that actually saw the light and did the right thing. I would definitely want to end on a good note. So the celebrities that still support Autism Speaks after all the crap: Adam Sandler, Adrian Pasdar, Alfred Molina, Alan Houston, Allison Williams, Amanda Seyfried, Amanda Brenneman, Amy Poehler, Austin Butler, Benjamin Bratt, Betty White, Big Sean, Bill Pullman, Blake Lively, Bruce Beck, Brian Cranston, Brian Delato, Burt Bacharach, Cameron Meinheim, CCH Pounder, Celine Dion, Chris Daltrey, Conan O'Brien, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Dan Spitz, Dave Grohl, David Deal, Deborah Messing, Darren Williams, Don Felder, Ed Ashner, Ed Begley Jr., Emmanuel Shariki, Eve, Five for Fighting, Gary Cole, Huda Khattab, if I butcher these names, I'm sorry, Jack Black, Janelle Monáe, Janae May, Jerry Seinfeld, Joe Girardi, Joe Montega, Joe Morgan, Joe Namath, John John Andrasik, Jonah Hill, Jon Stewart, Justin Tuck, Kathy Lee Gifford, Kelly Rowland, Kevin Fraser, Kevin James, Lady Gaga, Linda Cordellini, Lonnie Love, Lucinda Williams, Maria Minos, Mark Cuban, Maroon 5, Martin Short, Matt Dallas, Matthew Broderick, Max Burkholder, Michael Chiquilis, Milo Ventimiglia, Michael Musso, Nikki Reed, Norman Lear, Paul Simon, Rachel Bloom, Rachel Platten, Raphael Sadiq, Reggie Jackson, Rex Ryan, Ricky Gervais, Ronnie Lott, Rosie O'Donnell, Russell Wilson, Sarah McLachlan, Sarah Silverman, Savra Guthrie, Scott Foley, Sean Colvin, Sinbad, Stephen Colbert, Stephen Silas, Steve Young, Tina Fey, Tom Colligan, Tony Braxton, Tony Gonzalez, Wendy Williams, Wendy Port, Will Arnett, Willie Geist, Yoko Ono, and Zachary Quinto. So that's a lot of people who support this awful organization. But there is a company that is associated with a celebrity that withdrew their support, which we really appreciate. Okay? All the autistic community wants is to be listened to and not to be spoken over. Amplify our voices and express what the autistic community wants, not what the NT think we need. Last year, it was a dumpster fire. A lot of big names in entertainment were talking over us, deleting what we were saying. Here are two big examples of what listening to us looks like. Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon, for those you don't know, is a cable network in the United States that has children's programming, and I grew up on it. Last year, Nickelodeon made a Facebook post in support of Autism Speaks. The autistic community spoke out and explained why Autism Speaks was bad. Instead of listening to the people affected by the harm, they deleted autistic voices. They deleted the post, but like autistic do, we take screenshots. We screenshot everything. It was a meme that says "Pledge to be kind" with Autism Speaks logo. Okay, that was last year in 2021, but this past year was different. I happened to go onto Twitter to see what Nickelodeon was up to, and I was pleasantly surprised. And much to my surprise, they responded to me as well. It was really nice. So I said, thank you guys. Thank you for listening to the autistic community. It really does show a lot and means a lot to us. And this is what they said. Inclusion begins with acceptance. This activity was specifically designed for our autistic community during Autism Acceptance Month. Hashtag celebrate differences. So that was really, really nice to see. And then they said, thank you for being patient with us. That was awesome. And then someone who is related to them, if you are a child of the 80s and 90s, you'll know who she is. Melissa Joan Hart. She played Clarissa in Clarissa Explains It All. And she was also Sabrina on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I did not really see what she posted the year prior, but this year caught my eye. She listened to the autistic community, she got rid of the puzzle pieces, and changed what the narrative she was using due to autistic feedback. Everyone who everyone who said something, thank you. She then changed her profile frame but didn't realize it was from an ABA website. Autistic people told her what it was and why ABA was harmful, and then she changed it again. Um, the self-diagnosed autistic said, "Thank you for supporting Azan. If you missed my comment update on your last post, the frame you were using, well, thankfully not blue or puzzle piece related, was made by a company that uses ABA. ABA is also harmful to autistics. If you look for red instead or lighted up gold, some much better frames will hopefully pop up." And Melissa Joan Hart did respond. "The frame has been changed, but I am leaving the original in my profile photos for others to see the comments, and hopefully we can all become more educated. Thank you for the kind attention to this matter." She left the old one up for education. She didn't shut us up. This is what moving away from Autism Speaks looks like. So, I know this was long, and I know this was a lot of information, but Autism Speaks has been causing harm to our community for decades. Keep on fighting the good fight. Thank you for hanging out with me, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget to subscribe or follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Keep on speaking your truth and